Good. So welcome to this July edition of MIDAS, Master and Holders Developing Additional Skills. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce two colleagues and friends, Serena van der Heyde, who is the owner, general manager and proprietor of the Georgian House in London and Victorian House in beautiful Lake District, and Howard Wilcox, who works very closely with Serena on all sorts of business improvement projects, which we're going to tell you about. And we're here to tell you how to fix those frontline frustrations. So I hope you'll enjoy this afternoon while we show you some tools of the trade of lean manufacturing and lean process management in terms of getting rid of those frustrating things that might be happening at frontline. Probably now more than ever is a good time to think about the processes and procedures that you're engaged with in your businesses, because as you probably realize, we're all trying to do a lot more with a lot less. So being able to do that efficiently is probably quite a good thing to be able to do. So it gives me great pleasure to hand you over to both Howard and Serena, and thank you very much for joining us and giving up your time for us this afternoon.
Thank you, Hilary. I'm going to get on and just share with you my screen. So welcome everybody, thanks for tuning in today. So we've got for the next 45 minutes to now, we're going to be talking about those frontline frustrations. So I'm Howard Wilcox, I've been introduced to Serena van der Heyde. Now, my business is through Inspire Business Improvers, Heyde Associates, and as we've been told, Victorian House and Georgian House is Serena's establishments. So we're going to talk to you today about the fixing those frontline frustrations. Okay, so we're going to talk to you really about three fairly fundamental tools of lean production techniques. And we're going to whiz through these because we could do a masterclass for several days on this, but we are going to whiz through and just give you a real good flavour, good taste for what they mean. It's the 5 S's of workplace organisation. So essentially this is about creating a platform for performance so you can get your quality and your productivity at a good start, a good level. The next little tool we'll talk about is the 8 wastes, which is about identifying where the real work is and just trying to concentrate on the value added work, the things that the customer's paying you to do. And then the third one will be PDCA, which is the continuous improvement cycle, and just a little few tips on just how to implement improvements and to keep them going. Now, some of you may or may not know about these tools and techniques. Some of you may be using already. These tools and techniques came back from the Toyota production system. Now, this was born out of necessity at the end of the Second World War when Japan was rebuilding. And really, the engineers, Toichi Ono was one of those engineers, recognised that they needed to convert the materials they had into product and cash as soon as they could. They couldn't afford big warehouses full of different types of products. They needed to be able to just make those cars and get them out. Now, by doing this, they looked at reducing the lead time to get a more just-in-time system that some of you may have heard of, which is very familiar now in manufacturing terms. But this also involves not just reducing the lead time, but it involves maximising people productivity. So that's kind of reducing the overburden that people have in their workplace, the inconsistencies and waste. So waste is something that we're going to explain to you a little bit when we do the 8 wastes. Now, I think I have this discussion with a number of people. Does it have a place in hospitality? Well, yes, we think so, and we've proven that. We're going to share that with you this afternoon. So we're going to share with you some real life examples of why your day ends up in a bad day, if you like it. As we all know, a poor employee experience really could mean a poor guest experience, and it's likely to mean a cost to the business. So hopefully this afternoon we're going to give you a little bit of inspiration so that instead of kind of repeatedly tripping over these frustrating problems all the time and having to deal with that frustration or even apologise to the guests, we're going to just help you share, just share some tools with you to hopefully give you a bit of inspiration so you can actually put a bit more effort into sprinkling a bit of that gold dust and with that hospitality magic and hopefully getting your guests to return. So as we go through, there's a chat show. Can you please just add any ideas, any reactions to the chat? We'll pick those up as we go through, and it'd be great to hear what you guys have got to say. Okay, so the 5 S's. The 5 S's is essentially building that platform to perform from, and it's essentially having a well-organised, easy-to-use, clean, safe environment. You know, our hotels are beautiful. Look at this. This is the Victoria House. So this is a beautiful place. The guests come in, organised, easy to use, the lot. So the 5 S's, we do it for our guests at the front of house time and time again. We pride ourselves and we do make a fantastic effort. Now the 5 S's are sort, set, shine, standardise and sustain. So if we were to 5S, do a little 5S project to get somewhere ready for performance, we would follow these 5 steps, okay? And essentially, sort, we make sure there's no clutter in the working area. Set, we put everything in its place, and just in our photographs there, it's where our guests need it. Shine, we make sure that area is clean and fresh. Get it to the standard of cleanliness that we need for the quality that we're working at. The standardise, that basically means that we just get every area looking the same, working the same. And we do that front of house. So every bedroom and every public area, our guests know what to expect. Okay, and then sustain is all about actually keeping that day in, day out, keeping that level of organisation and cleanliness, but then still improving. And I believe most of us are doing that day in, day out. So we are doing it, but I always ask the question when I come into different hospitality environments is, why do we do this to ourselves? There we go. We've got a reception area for our fresh linen coming in, just slung under the back there. There's a room there with all of our spare kettles and bits and pieces. And then we've got the maintenance guy. You've probably all seen a space like that, the maintenance guy's thing. So we need to go and retrieve something quickly. We haven't got a hell in hopes chance, have we? You know, we need to do something. The guest is waiting for that spare plug or that spare kettle. You know, the maintenance guy needs to go and get a screwdriver, but he's having to look through everything. We should treat these areas as a precious commodity. So if we can use the 5 S's to do that. Now I've got a couple of examples just to talk through with you. There you go. We've just seen that picture of the work area. I think this is a great example because Pavel, the maintenance guy here, he did a project, and you can see in the first photograph where he got all his tools lined up. It was all neatly, and he could retrieve things very quickly. And a couple of years later, he went back and improved it even further to just even improve that accessibility to everything. We knew everything was all clean and tidy, a brilliant place for him to be able to service the hotel, the guests, and the rest of the team. Another little example here, where we're receiving the clean laundry from the laundry itself. But we'd spend hours and valuable time digging through, trying to find things, because the ticket on the bag would be against the wall. We couldn't see it, digging it out, moving it around. But the transformation took place there. The team got involved in this one. They got in, tidied the place up, swept it out, made some labels, all very low cost. And got some chipboard, cut that up and made some bays, and we were nicely ready to take that waste, and I think it was 45 minutes a day or something we created by doing that for the head linen porter. And there's another little thing here which is quite a good little project in a bit more detail here, but this is the use of Kanban, which in Toyota terms is a signal for replenishment. And this is what one of our bright colleagues did. They, to stop them running out of cups at breakfast time, they would mark out the storage area so they could visually have a signal of when the kitchen porter needed to replace them. So we didn't have that panic of running out of cups. Serena, what do you think to 5 S's?
Yeah, well, absolutely. These have been really good examples. And it just means that, especially when you're confined to space, as we are, that we're making the most of it. We're just using and storing what we really need. And plus it's really visual, so that people, when they're starting, can find things really, really quickly. It's easier to train. It saves a lot of time, and yeah, altogether it's improves the efficiency and layout of all the hotel by applying these techniques.
That's it. It takes the frustration out of it. It's a good place to launch the performance. Okay, so that's the 5 S's. Hopefully you've picked up a few bits there, and please pass comment in the chat if you've got an area like that in your establishment, or if you've actually done something like this. We'd love to share some best practice as well. Now, the second element I'm going to talk to you about is the 8 wastes. Now, this is kind of one of my favourite things when I'm out there working with teams. This really is a list of 8 wastes, but it really helps us to develop a common language to describe issues, so that we can have some really good conversations about it. It's not just someone's opinion. It's about 8 wastes. We can look at the reasons why. You know, and having a framework like that, it allows us to take the emotion out of situations. And if you can, we can try and support any situation, any example you've got with some data. The data, I think, will be for another masterclass at another time, but that is really good to get. And then I think the very simple reason is that working together and sharing good practice, it really does encourage that kind of sense of teamwork. So now I'm going to go through each of the 8 wastes. We've got a slide on each, and I think Serena's hovering there with some really good kind of practical examples that will bring this to life even further than this. So the first waste is transportation. So that's movement of items or people more frequently than required. It's often a poorly designed workflow. You know, I think anybody who's spent time working as a waiter will know about empty-handedness and keeping things moving, and the maitre d' shout to get you moving. That's a really good example where we can just move things and take things and not move around empty. That's really helpful in most establishments. Down there in the corner, we've got a flow chart, which I think one of Serena's colleagues created, which helped with a project he did on looking at the linen room. But in some studies I've done, it could speed up to 20% of the time where the housekeeper is outside of the room, going and walking backwards and forth to find things. So this can be quite detrimental to the efficiency of a housekeeping department. Anyway, Serena, do you want to share with us the example that you've got?
Yeah, this was a project from one of my colleagues, and she had a look at how she just focused in on the bathroom and how that was being cleaned. So this little map that you can see was her just writing down every stage that she went through to leave the bathroom clean. And one of the stages was about refilling the toiletries, because we use refillable ones that are more sustainable. And unfortunately, we don't, because it's both our buildings are old and lovely, but not suitable for trolleys. We're not able to transport everything to the room. So every time that you had toiletries that needed refilling, it was a question of going back to the cupboard, taking the pumps out, refilling the toiletries, and then back again to the room that you were doing. And she worked out that she may be doing this several times during her day, that she'd be making this trip several times. So it was she just looked at it a different way, decided to buy extra bottles in so that she could refill all the bottles before she started and have spares with her, take the spares with her to the rooms, just swap them out, and then at the end of her shift, she would refill all the ones that she'd swapped out ready for the next day. And if each of that refilling process had taken her, I think just under, she said it was about 7 minutes. But if she was doing it and then her colleagues were each doing it 4 or 5 times during the shift, then actually we very quickly were adding up to several hours a week that were paid time that was simply wasted, that she's now saved.
That's great, and I think it's important there just to see how that scales up over the week, over the day, over the week, over the team. So that's a good example. Thanks for that. So the key with transportation, the target is we've got to think, let's minimise transportation. Just think that way. Okay, so the second of the 8 wastes is inventory. So this is just having more materials than you need to keep the next process going. Excess inventory or stocks or stores of material, it costs money to have it there, it costs money to manage it, and some of these materials could actually deteriorate over time, especially food and linen. So this is quite an important one. Foodstuffs is a great example in the kitchen. It can you know, clog up storage areas, and we need to keep that good turnover. We need to keep that freshness. Another one is excess linen, and we've got a photo there of Serena's colleagues' cupboards in the Georgian house, and perhaps you can let us know about the example there, Serena.
Yeah, again, this was another project that our housekeeping department took on, and at the time we didn't have a very sensible way of storing the new linen, and they couldn't tell visually at what point they were likely to run out, and so they were constantly over ordering linen just in case they ran out. But by laying it out, working out each of these cubby holes are kind of marked with a Kanban, so they understood at what point it was going to run out, where they needed to reorder, and to what level they needed to reorder, so that they could see visually straight away. And that made a big difference as far as the accuracy of ordering. It meant that we didn't have extra bags or laundry sort of left in piles on the floor because it didn't all stack away properly. So it was better for health and safety. It was better because it wasn't damaging the linen that was sitting there. It had less money tied up in linen stocks from the business point of view. And also, again, it was much easier to train people that were taking over the role or stepping in, because they could see that the whole system was laid out so clearly and so easily that it was easy to understand and to do induction for new people.
Again, that's a good example, and it was a low-cost example as well. It's just making the most of your space, wasn't it? Reorganising with the team.
Yeah, it's not about for so many of these things. None of it's rocket science. It's taking the time to measure things and to time things and to just to look into it more deeply, so that you're using the data, so that you're really sure that that you're looking at the real situation and not just going off a hunch or a guess. And so each of our team members putting the work in to do these projects get a real understanding of what the needs are before setting up the systems. And then that seems to be far more robust for the future.
Good. Thank you, Serena. And the target there is just try and keep enough to keep the next process flowing. Okay, that is the target that we try and look down on. So keep your comments coming in, please, if you've got some examples. Hopefully you're seeing things that are familiar. The next waste is the waste of motion. So this is really about kind of ergonomics. It's about that your immediate work area. It's twisting, turning, after a shift, bending down. That can really take it out of you, really frustrating and pull your performance down, your mood down, could even induce some sickness and absence. So the waste of motion is a really important one, and we need to really try and identify these activities and get rid of them. A very classic examples there is in a bar and overreaching for glasses or for the spirits or where things are positioned. So you can easily fall into this trap of these repeated motions that aren't good for you. Another example, and again I've got another photograph. The reception desk that the team did at the Georgian house, when you had that revamp and you did all the lovely redecorating and stuff, and the team actually developed their reception desk to get rid of these waste of motion, didn't they, Serena?
Yeah, absolutely, because part of what we wanted to do was to get rid of our traditional desk, which before hid a multitude of sins. We stopped everything, including the kitchen sink behind there, I think. And when we decided to move to this little sort of small desk pod, we had to really focus in on the stuff that we needed. So we used those 5 S's. We used that approach to really work out what we definitely needed in the area. And then after that, the team went through and worked out what they were using most frequently, what they used at what height, so that they were really reducing the amount of twisting and turning. They were making it really comfortable and easy for them to use. Because at the end of the day, these little things that are irritating, the low bends and the awkward, heavy things that you've put in a silly place, They're just the little niggles that can take some of the pleasure out of your work, as well as obviously in extreme cases causing, repetitive strain injuries.
Yes, it's very important that, and just to keep people satisfied and keep them smiling at the end of a hard day, greeting all of those lovely guests. Okay, so the target there really. I'm just having a bit of a. Just bear with me for one moment. Ah, there we go. That's popped in. So the target there is just to minimise these motions, get things ergonomically sound, and a lot of the time we don't actually realise we're doing this until we step out of ourselves and perhaps study. So the next waste, let me just, sorry about this, do excuse me. The next waste is the waste of waiting. Okay, so this is waiting for all sorts of things. Could be people, equipment, information, just waiting for the next, or just waiting for that previous step to finish so you can do your bit. What we're finding here, there's a photograph of mine there with housekeepers waiting for the departure list. It's a Sunday morning after a busy Saturday night in a seafront hotel, bit of a party hotel. They're waiting there, 10 housekeepers waiting for 10 minutes. So that, if my calculations are right, Serena, is about an hour and 40 minutes. So that's time we've lost. What could we do with that hour and 40 minutes? Apart from the team wanting to get going because they want to get off on a Sunday afternoon. So the waste of waiting, and this can be quite debilitating if we don't stop it. Inappropriate shift times as well. People coming into work early when there's kind of really nothing for them to do. And I think that's something that you addressed, isn't it, Serena?
Yeah, absolutely. We had that on our breakfast shift because we'd have traditionally, or we used to have a situation where we'd have the chef come in first, and then we'd have the whole service team come in at the same time. And after, again, it was a project, but they studied the times, the peak times of use for the guests when the guests actually arrived, and realized that for nearly the first hour, certainly the first 3/4 of an hour, we'd have very few guests, and we didn't need the whole team for the first starting period. So as a result of collecting data over a decent period, then the team were able to see when they really needed that backup, and they were comfortable then for us to change the start times so that we had one person coming to set up and serving the first guests, and then the rest of the team would come later on in the shift when they were really needed. And I think if I'd just gone to the team and said, we've got this great idea about how we're going to save money, it means that one person's going to set everything up and they're going to be on their own until everybody else comes in. I think that would have been really unpopular and difficult to manage, and they would have looked for every reason why it wasn't going to work and cited every example of when it was difficult or challenging. Whereas in fact, because this was their project and they were running it, they were able to do the data collection themselves, and they were able to then agree times of when the shifts should run that they were comfortable with and felt that would be safe and not put them under unnecessary or unrealistic levels of strain and challenge.
That's good. Another good example of the guys doing the improvements to themselves rather than you doing it to them, which is the best way, I think. Okay, so with waiting, the target there is let's try and get value added, or the things that the guest wants, all of the time. The next one is the waste of overproduction. So this is producing a product or service or information, whatever it may be, before the guest or the customer actually needs it. So a good example of this is food production, and there's a website or an initiative, the Guardians of Grub, and they're stating that food waste is about 18% across the whole hospitality industry. So that's a lot of that is due to overproduction, and they split it into preparation, spoilage, and plate waste, and then other. But I'll signpost you towards that if you want to find out, because they've done some great work on that. And then overproduction, things like making a bed up as a double when actually later it gets sold as a twin. That's overproduction. It's doing it. We'd have to think how we can overcome that, and now we have somebody ready to make it. But it doesn't stop it from being a waste. Again, Serena, do you want to let us know one of your examples with that?
Well, just picking up on that, I think that you're quite right. If you've already made up your bed and it's ready for one configuration, and actually it gets sold in a different one, it's really frustrating to the housekeeping team. And I think sometimes the reception team don't necessarily understand the amount of work and the time that it takes, and the fact that you can't really reuse the linen because it's already be creased if you try and put away again. So there's some waste there very often. But bringing it together as a project and getting both reception and housekeeping to talk about it together, then they realize that this is actually costing money in terms of getting people to do it for the second time. They realize the cost in terms of the linen that's involved. And also, I think they understand better about the frustration of the housekeeping time, the housekeeping team, that just don't like having to do it a second time when they've left it all beautifully laid up in the first place. So it just encourages encouraged our reception team to think about it more cleverly, and to try much harder to try and plan and inform and communicate, so that the rooms are made up as they're going to be used, and they're placing the right people in the right rooms that have been made up either as twin or double.
Good, thank you again, Serena. So the target there is to produce what's needed, when it's needed, at the time it's needed, just to keep a lid on that overproduction. Okay, now it's over-processing. So over-processing is really where we're making processes too complex, or we're duplicating things, or we're doing more than we need to get the desired effect. You know, an example of that is not using the current software and systems that you have to the full. I saw an example not too long ago about a standalone lost and found system that was very robust on its own, but actually the hotel management system had one which actually worked a lot quicker, had most of the data already in there, the guest name and their addresses and everything. So there was a kind of an over process in there, taking some valuable time up at the end of the day for the housekeeping team. And again, we've got a bit of a process flow in there that one of Serena's colleagues did, and a fishbone diagram, which I think Chris Dodd might have been telling you about. And also, do you want to explain about your overcomplicated check-in process?
Yeah, this was another project. It was a reception project, and believe it or not, the plan there with the blue and red and yellow patches was our check-in process. And it's no surprise that it was quite lengthy. When you see it all written down, you realise just how much information is being transferred to the customer. And it's really important to us to make sure that we're giving the information they really need. But going through this exercise caused our reception team to sit down and think, what do they really need? And COVID, all the security procedures around COVID were adding to the complexity of it and making it even more unwieldy. And so this gave our team a chance to work out the information they really needed, other ways that we could give that information. Is it really necessary to tell them about everything if we've got clear signposting, et cetera, et cetera? And as a result of this, they were able then to reduce the time that it took to check a guest in. And we feel that we were really concentrating on the value-added areas where our customer service was useful, and finding other ways to communicate the stuff, perhaps things like the code for the Wi-Fi and stuff like that, which actually we handed in written form. And we just found ways of making it quicker, easier, and better for the customer.
But with us, wasn't it, where if there was a guest that did particularly need that information, were you able to furnish that at that time? So some check-ins may take a little bit longer than others, though. Yeah,
and it was important. I mean, we still have to maintain our flexibility, but they produced a little written card with the things that were most often asked for. And also they went through and kind of examined that, because very often they'd check customers in and they'd give them the breakfast time and the Wi-Fi code. And then the customer would be heading out 5 minutes later and will already have forgotten all those things. So they really made a note of the things that the customers were coming back to ask again when they'd already been told. And so that's why they decided to just give a written a little written card with the things that were asked several times over, and that allowed them to concentrate on the sort of softer face-to-face welcome.
Great. Some nice little tips there. Thank you. Okay, so with over-processing and this burden of having cumbersome processes, we've got to take a look at it, a process flow chart. Again, that's perhaps another masterclass, but a process flow chart there helps us to see that step by step, and then we can do some brainstorming on a fishbone chart there. It's brilliant. But the aim is just to minimise those steps. That's what we've got to keep in our mind with over-processing. You know, quite often we can see things, we're doing things, we just got to stand up and challenge them at times and just understand what value they're actually bringing to the guest. Okay, the last but one waste is defects. So that's errors, mistakes, reworks, just anything that goes wrong basically. So this could be, you know, this could be something with linen, it could be something with data provided, it could be the whole range. I think one thing I saw not too long ago is incorrect booking details. So the reception team would prepare the manifest, if you like, for each guest for their spa treatments, take it to the spa reception, but then the spa reception would intercept that, would find on a number of these that there was different problems, incorrect. So we had to go to and fro and making sure it was right before we went to the guest with their day's treatments. And sometimes some of these leaked out to the guests, and they were advised that they're actually going to get different treatments to what they booked for. So this can be very, very costly defects, and this is an electronic example where the things haven't been put on the system quite correctly, and it evokes all of those other 8 ways, all of those other 7 ways that we've just spoke about. So that's one example there. Another example, and I can hear all of the housekeepers out there sighing when we say about remaking or reworking a made bed, because there's you've got all the way through to it, and then you've just tucked it in at the final bit, and you know it's a bit of a tear down on the double duvet. So, and I think this is an experience you've had, isn't it, Serena?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that everybody that's worked in housekeeping, we know that very often our laundry suppliers aren't supplying us with perfect linen all the time. And the thing is that it doesn't help our arguments and trying to improve our quality with our laundry unless we're actually keeping proper data. So I know that we already, record when there's a reject and so on. But we've learned from you, Howard, about really recording and going to some depth so that we really understood that it wasn't just however many items, but these are the certain items. And rather than just throwing blame and saying the quality is not good enough and using generalizations, it's so much more useful for us to make a point by saying, actually, it's all the king size duvets. The rest of your stuff is coming in pretty consistently, but the number of rejects on this particular item are unacceptable. And is this to do with how you're treating them or the quality or whatever? And we're able to have a much more constructive discussion with them that hopefully works towards a solution. And I think internally as well, when you're trying to work between departments, it doesn't help when one department is wanting to blame another for things that aren't working well. Whereas when you take the personal side out of it and you just drill down to the data and you look at it objectively, it really helps both teams to come together and look for a solution rather than feel that their work is being singled out for criticism.
I think it's a strong message there, Serena, about understanding it as data and being objective about it rather than just another opinion. So that's good. Thanks for that example. Okay, so the target there is 0 defects. That will keep you on your toes. Just pushing for 0 defects. That's where we want to get to. That might be quite a tough target, but I'm sure we're not unused to that out there trying to keep our guests happy. So, but it's all of the wastes that are affected by that. So the last waste is the waste of skills. So it's underutilisation of our people, their skills, their knowledge, their creativity. My favourite with this, and probably some of you will say, well, it's obvious, is actually getting people involved in problem-solving activities, looking at the waste and getting people into projects that Serena's just alluded to on several occasions. I find this is brilliant because we can just pull out, I see people suddenly being these expert problem solvers. They're taken away and they can solve problems for their own daily work life, and they can really empower those people, and then they can share that with it, and it's quite infectious, and it's a good way to build the team and get that performance that we all require. Another example could be people working in the wrong roles, and I think you've probably got a little example of that, Serena.
Yeah, absolutely. At the moment, because we've been in Grasmere Hotel, we've been so short-staffed. It's slightly better now because universities are out for the holidays, so temporarily we've got a reprieve. But we've struggled to recruit, so it's meant that my management team have actually been spending an awful lot of time cooking breakfast, serving, doing the housekeeping and so on. And that's just a frustration for everybody, really, because, you know, the business, we need those people to be running the business and looking at the strategy and the future of the business and guiding it, not with their heads down having to work in housekeeping all the time. So it absolutely is a waste of skills because they're overqualified for the jobs and the roles that they're carrying out in the business. And the other thing about the hidden talent, I think you're absolutely right. In our experience, where we've got different members of different departments together to work on a problem, then they've had to go and do the research and the counting and the working out, you know, how they're going to plan the future working of any particular function. But it's really helped develop people because they start to look for solutions. They're looking for ways of analysing the problem. And in pretty much every case, the people that have been involved in gathering data and working on these different challenges have actually gone on to do apprenticeships with us, to then, you know, move up through the business, to go into management roles and so on. So it's been a great way for us to discover hidden talent within our team.
Thanks for that. Yes, and I can vouch for that too. Okay, so the target then for skills is let's utilise our people as best we can. We've all got a day job to do, but we can still try and utilise those skills and then just develop people. Okay, so that moving on nicely now, and keep coming in with the comments in the chat if you can. Is the plan, do, check, act, or the improvement cycle? And this really is a way, it seems fairly obvious, but if you sit back and think about it, we probably don't follow this little routine. It's good to have in the back of your mind when you look at actually implementing a small change. Now, this tells us plan. So we make a plan for desired improvement in the way we want to do something, want to change something. So then we do. So the do bit is actually go and try it out on a small scale before you implement a little pilot scheme, just to see, you know, just to see how it works and does it need smoothing out. From there, you do the check step. So check is quite simple. Does the do actually meet the plan? And then you can have a little think about this and see what it's going. You may want to change something. You may want to go back around the loop. So from there, if you are happy with it, you act. And you adopt that improvement as a normal way of doing things. Maybe it's put some new labels up in the linen room or reorganise the fridge. It could be a number of different things. But also you've got to remember, if you get to this point and you think, well, we've tried it out, and actually it's not going to work, it's not good for a number of reasons, then you can just abandon it. But then what you do is just go back around the loop. Okay, so we just go round and round. There's a clue in the title which says continuous improvement. So we just go round and round this loop. And we may look at a problem firstly, and we may just improve it by 20%. That's great, fantastic. As long as you close that loop off, and you can come back to it, just like Pavel did with the organising the maintenance area in the hotel. He did probably 50%, and then he came back and completed it when he had time a year later. And we've got to keep in our mind, we keep going around this loop, but it's the drip that fills the bucket. So all of these small steps will help us get to that perfection, that zero defects, that minimum waste that we're looking for. Serena, how has this worked for you with all the projects and stuff you've been doing?
I think this bit's really important because in my experience, teams sort of, you either ask a team, what do you think of reception? How do you think we're doing it? Do you think it's good? Is there anything we can improve? And the team will say, oh, it's brilliant. There's nothing that we need to improve. And it's really hard for them to interrogate their own area and their own function objectively. They find it really difficult to see anything wrong with it. And I think that building this plan, do, check, act into the projects and so on that they've done, they've become much better at actually interrogating how we do things and being able to see them with a broader perspective, and not just thinking, oh, well, we've done it like this forever. Of course it's perfect. You know, it isn't necessarily perfect, and it helps people to look at it again. And the other thing that I think is the other end of the scale, when you have an area of the business where people are really frustrated, they've been really frustrated for ages, and yet they've never thought about changing it or doing something about it. Oh, it always happens. It drives me crazy. So in that case, why don't we change it? Why don't we make it better? So I think for both these cases, this is a really helpful, easy model that everybody throughout the business understands, and we just keep on going round and round, revisiting and working to improve.
Great, that was a lovely explanation there. So please make comments if what you think to this or anything we've said. So we're coming to an end now of the formal presentation. So it's kind of any questions really, put it out there to you guys.
We've had a few comments in the chat. Thanks, Howard, and thank you, Serena. That was really interesting. We had some comments about great examples, and I think that's really landing with some people. So thank you. I'm always struck when I talk to both of you about the small scale problems that can be so easily fixed. Often when we're in the operation, we think of problems as these big things that's going to take ages to fix. And from working with you, Howard in particular, I'm always struck by how little actions can make a huge difference.
I think you're quite right there. I think small actions can, and it's the improvements I'm always impressed by are just how simply and cheaply things can be fixed. For an example, there was an airport floor and a departure floor that they're having real problems with cleaning. The night shift guys trying to get the floor nice and clean. You can imagine a great big area. But the solution at the end of the day was just to buy some plastic cups that actually measured the mixture and the water and the cleaning solution together, because they were just putting too much in and it was bubbling up everywhere, and they were spending something like £50,000 a year extra in labour to clean this big departure floor. So yeah, those small little things can make a massive difference. And I think also, you know, Serena edged on, these things can soon add up. The economy of scale. It's, you know, these small things can, over a day, over a week, over a month, over a year, can suddenly free up a load of time and get rid of a lot of frustrations and give you these times where you can just make the guests want to return. A little bit of magic, you know.
Something we haven't talked about as well is actually the time and commitment it takes to looking into these different problems, because it may be a small issue, but still to do it properly and to measure it and to really do the research into it and the work into it to find a solution that sticks takes time. And so I think from a leadership perspective, we have been really careful to make sure that we're not asking people to do this within their ordinary rotated time, because we recognize that if you're under the constant pressure of delivering to customers, there's no way you can do all this. It's hot air. We can't expect anybody to do anything with it. We've got to give them a decent amount of time to commit to it. And so I have to pay up front for that investment. But I really recognize that as time has gone on, we've made great savings by these tiny little changes. And the frustration that it saves for people in the team and the feeling of empowerment is really, really important as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about that, because that's really why we chose this as a topic for now, because I think it's getting rid of that frustration and giving people at the front line the power to feel that they are autonomous about how things are done and have control about how things are done, and that they're able to fix the little things that frustrate them every day. And that when you get frustrated every day, one of the thoughts in one's head is, managers don't know what they're doing. If they knew what was going on here, they would make it different. And I heard a very interesting story from some colleagues of general managers who were back to the floor during lockdown, and they suddenly realised just little things about the operation, like what a stupid place they kept their tea bags for breakfast service. And it was only when they did it themselves that they actually moved the tea bags. That would never have come up in the normal course of conversation. But it's only when you work there you think, why are those things there? That's a stupid place to have them. We're reaching out to get the most common thing that you serve at breakfast, and the most common thing we serve at breakfast is the hardest thing to reach. It's just really interesting how we get into habits and don't realise that they're causing problems.
That's it. I think it's about just that was a great example, but it's just about challenging and just thinking a little bit differently. And I always think that the best way, and it's what Serena does with her colleagues, is allow them to do the improvements to themselves instead of doing the improvements to them or for them, and because when I work with these teams of people, they all know the issues. They just need a channel to have to explain what's happening. I recently worked in a sales office on a team for a week, and the manager pointed me towards one lady. She's a real moaner. I homed straight in on her and had a cup of tea with her. And she was moaning, but she was just venting out. She was describing the 8 ways to me that were in this project that I was going to do for a week. So it was an easy low-hanging fruit for me. Bless her. She gave me all the answers, and I had quite an easy week of it. But it's just giving those people the chance to offload and to express what they're thinking, and give them some empowerment.
What we found by doing the training across the team as well is that it's given us a shared language. So that rather than a kind of pressure from management to be saving time and saving money all the time, and then kind of push back from the other way, that actually we've all done this training. We understand where all this different waste sort of comes into play, and it feels much more as though we can discuss things very openly we use all these tools that we've learnt about, so the fishbone and the process flow. And if we've got something where we're not agreeing, rather than pushing back and forth, we actually just get out our post-it notes and look into it, and we work on a solution together. So it doesn't feel that we're imposing a solution. We're looking for the best way for everybody. And I think that can help with everyone.
Thank you. And do you think that's changed the culture in your organisation, in your hotels? Do you think that's influenced the culture by which you lead and manage?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. I think when we have new people and before they've sort of got used to it, so it takes a while to get them into it. But definitely, once people have started doing projects themselves and so on, I think that they feel, as you say, empowered to do things. But it feels much more collaborative than it did before, and that's really helped the business.
Good, thank you. So I should leave some space for any questions. Is anybody who's attending got any questions for Serena or Howard, or any comments or any suggestions of your own? We'd love to hear them, so please do join in, put them in the chat, or let us know. We'd love to hear of your experiences. And also, Serena, you're going to say?
Well, just that for the different things that we've described in these examples, they've all been examples where you can kind of liken them to a process or a manufacturing sort of system, I suppose. But we have actually tried to apply this to marketing. So we looked at one particular room type that wasn't selling very well, and then we applied all the different tools and techniques to how we were marketing this thing. And it was really challenging to do that, because you were taking a model that was designed for a manufacturing process and really looking at very much a service thing. But in the end, it helped us to analyse it and to understand more about what was going wrong with it. And so my point is that it's not easy to do that, but it is still possible, and it did still bring benefit.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Thank you. We've talked about that before with applying 5S principles to even, you know, your email inbox or something that's digital. It doesn't have to be from a manufacturing point of view. And we have so many processes in hotels. We're jolly clever at the stuff that we do. With Howard's going to kill me for this one because I tease him about it. But in manufacturing, you just make stuff. Like, but in hospitality, we're growing it, making it, transforming it. It's I'm teasing him. He knows I'm teasing. But we run so many different processes, and we have to have so many different skills that this is really valuable stuff to be able to do. Sorry, Howard, come back at me on that one.
No, I'm just saying there's a question there. How do you tackle the change in regulations for COVID in a lean way?
That's a good one.
Well, that's good. I think it's probably we have to look at the current regulations, and we have to look at how these fit into our process, whether that be process of cleaning the room and the additional things we need to do, or it could be the process of checking people in at the reception and looking at what additional things we do. Like we just heard Serena's colleague in the reception there actually did the process flow and then actually segregated out the COVID bits, and with the change of regulation, she's been able to pull those things back and make it a little bit more streamlined. So yeah, it's about looking at it as a process, deciding what you need to do, and just trying to assess how much time is involved in that and what value it's giving.
Yeah, and I think looking for what you can leave out as much as what you put in. Because with changes, maybe there are things that you used to do that you no longer need to. For example, when COVID first struck, we stopped offering remakes to our customers, or at least it's on request only, because we felt that people didn't want members of the team going into their rooms for obvious reasons. And so sometimes there are different steps that as you change things, there are steps that become redundant, and it's worth revisiting everything, isn't it?
Okay, there's another question coming in. How do you find a balance between a tight process and guests with very different needs and expectations of us? And I think that's good, because I think basically the process, and say with the reception process, there is some flexibility in there. We can see the minimum requirement we need to do, because we do have a different expectancy. So I think with the reception that Serena was talking about, there is a process describing all the things that need to happen. At the end of the day, they just need a room key. But there's other things that we go through to get that. But that can be flexed as to what the guest needs. Would you agree with that, Serena?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's another question come in terms of efficiency in direct customer service impacts. How does the system measure customer service impact on an independent and external metric? Declaration of interest. Let me have a little think about that one. Can you think about it? Can you see this one, Serena, on the screen?
Yeah, just reading it. I think it's really difficult to get an independent and external metric, and I know that there are sort of different ways that you can do follow up with guest questionnaires and things like that. But I think it is, and especially if it's general, it's quite difficult to really get what your I run a mystery guest company. I did wonder that would make sense. Well, that's what you need to do. Charge your mystery guest company with finding out these things. I think we're pretty lucky nowadays, because it is easy for us to follow up with customers and ask for feedback, and also to make sure that it's worth running different. So before now, when we've been specifically after information for a particular project, then we maybe have done away with quite a lot of the general questions we're asking customers on their follow-up email when they've checked out. but maybe ask them something just very specific, or as they're leaving, you know, oh, have you enjoyed your stay, etc., etc. We're looking at making this change. Would you tell us how this such and such aspect has impacted your stay? So not to be frightened to ask the customer. But I suspect that Graham would say that that's when we're asking them directly, we still won't get as straight an answer as perhaps a mystery guest or a third party might get.
Can I add in there a little bit? Because I think for me, it's about, sometimes in the operation, we get really hung up on the inputs, and the outputs are actually what maybe we should look at measuring. And that's, I suppose, a little bit what the Red Star process does. If you're in the realms of AA star ratings, and I know that many properties have dropped that lately, but it's a system measurement of the outcomes for the customer rather than a system measurement of the inputs of the operation. And I think being able to separate out those two is really important, and that is something that this work helps to do, because you get a clear look at what your inputs are and a clear look at what your outputs are, and then you can prioritize from there. I don't know if that helps to answer the question, but for me that's quite important, and it sends us looking for sort of qualitative feedback as well as quantitative. So the service impact is usually really qualitative in terms of the data collection. So we do need to go out and ask the right questions, and to ask the right questions, we need to be clear on what the outcome was that we were trying to create.
Good. Thank you for that answer. I'm just looking now. We've got Joanne Taylor-Stagg. Hi, Joanne. Do you recommend getting a person from outside the area you're reviewing to bring a fresh perspective, e.g. getting a front desk associate to work with a housekeeping review? Very much so. I think bringing somebody in from a different perspective who's perhaps not emotionally attached to that area, who's, they're in a similar line of work, let's face it. I think that's very good. I was just reading an article today about Harry Redknapp bringing the rugby coach Clive Woodward in to be the trainer at the football club at Southampton. But that was great because he was in the same kind of business, but he brought in a completely different perspective. Everyone was saying, oh, he's a rugby man, he can't do football. But he did, and he made some improvements there. So I agree with that. And Serena, is that in your experience? Yeah,
a lot of the projects that we've run, we've tried to get cross-department involvement, and I think that not only does it help you to get the different perspective, but it also helps just with team building across the business and getting people not to think and work in silos.
Good. Heyde, have you got any thoughts on that question?
I do, but it's going to sound like a plug, because I absolutely recommend getting a person from outside the area if you want to investigate this further. So not only in-house, but also to look at, getting someone in from outside to look at your processes and to help you to tidy them up and make sure that you're not causing frustration on the front line.
Yeah, I think it's the coaching thing. It's getting someone to ask the questions that perhaps you wouldn't ask yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe asking the obvious questions that you don't ask yourself as well.
I think it's helped us having Howard, because a lot of our teams are able to talk directly to them, vent their frustrations and give their ideas. I think sometimes more freely than they're able to within our existing teams, or who knows. I'm not sure that they share exactly the same perspectives with Howard as they do with us, and I think that gives us an extra benefit.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I'm not trying to plug myself, but anybody externally, I think, can come in, and it's a very privileged position where you can be that voice of reason and just stand back from it all and see the wood for the trees, really, and ask those questions and really help people to find their own answers, because they're all quite capable of it. It's just they need a little bit of assistance every now and then. Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock now. I don't know what the time is. I don't know whether the time Chris has gone. I don't want to overrun anybody.
I think that's probably a good time to to finish, because it is 3. Thank you very much to both of you, Serena and Howard, for giving up your time to help us understand the principles that you've been using so successfully in your business for so long. If anybody is interested, and you are interested, we are running a course, a series of workshops with Howard, and are also Institute of Leadership and Management accredited. So if you do want to get some qualification, or you want to put your team through this process, please feel free to ask, and we can give you some details. We'll pass you on some details. So thank you very much for that, and it was lovely to see you as always. So this brings to an end our first series of MIDAS for this season. So we started off in January with all sorts of hopes and fears for the future. January was a very different place when everything was closed and everything was dark, and we're now open and kind of, you know, maintaining our balance in the ever-changing world out there. So we're going to take a bit of a break, because we figure that everyone in hospitality is pretty tied up right now. So we're going to take a break and come back to you in September. There's more content on this these subjects. We've got a great little video that Chris has made with us for the fishbone diagram, to tell you how the fishbone diagram works and how to get that to work for you in a very practical way. And then the podcast is just Howard and me.
Hello and welcome to another MIDAS video for hotel and hospitality professionals.
There it is. And shooting and
well, I was talking for a second now.
That's all right. That's the video. So Chris has put the links up there, the podcast and the video, a bit more information. And yeah, feel free to contact us, and we wish you a very happy summer, and we look forward to seeing you in the autumn. So thanks for attending, and yeah, we look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me along. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
As always. Thanks, Serena.